This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday.
Son of a bitch is dug in like an Alabama tick.
You're hit. You're bleeding, man.
I ain't got time to bleed.
Oh, he ain't got time to bleed. He was the 38th governor of the great state of Minnesota, where he resides today. Jesse Ventura, with his special forces fame, professional wrestling and acting celebrity, more recently, internationally recognized shows calling out government and the lack of transparency. He's most recognized in my world, folks, for taking out Hubert Humphrey's son Skip and then St. Paul Mayor Norm Coleman on the Reform Party ticket back in November 1998 when I was attending law school in the Twin Cities. This is a governor who cut taxes considerably. He didn't oppose gay marriage. He took a libertarian view on marijuana use, and he even helped Minnesota transition to a shall issue status for concealed carry permits. One of America's most notable statesmen, Governor Jesse Ventura. Welcome to the Tom Anderson Show.
Hi, Tom. Great to be here. And I haven't been to Alaska since I did conspiracy theory, and we went up there and discovered that apparatus you have called HARP.
Oh boy, that's right. I remember I watched the series, and I watched that program with great interest. We can actually get into that in a bit. You have a huge and growing fan base nationally. In fact, if listeners go to peopleforjesse.com and on its respective social media connectors, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, they can join your growing army led by really a remarkable advocate on your behalf, Melissa White. I'm very impressed with her, an entrepreneur and a well-spoken really manager of the group. And actually, there's a large slice of Americans that are promoting the People for Jesse Ventura Draft Jesse. They love you. They can't get enough of you. And so fast forward to now, and here in Alaska particularly, their efforts by extension led here in the Alaska Green Party and State Coordinator Robert Shields facilitated, it looks like, you're a nominee for president along with former Georgia Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney. And that's over Howie Hawkinson's team. What do you think about that you're on the ballot for president in Alaska?
Well, it's humbling, and I'm honored that of what went down. I guess I should give a little backstory. I had been in contact with the Green Party, and I told them that I felt that if they would give me a clear path to their nomination, in other words, just give it to me, that I would run against the Democrats and Republicans under the Green Party banner and be able to get their ballot access, which was the key, getting the ballot access, because I think they're in well over 40-some states, if not all of them. They're close to all of them. And the Green Party wouldn't do it. They offered me this proposition that I could go to their convention and that if Howie Hawkins didn't achieve 50%, that would free up the delegates and that I would win on the second round. Well, that was too thin for me because I saw what happened in the Reform Party back in the 90s after Ross Perot did a great thing, got 20% of the vote in 92 for a third party himself. Well, in 96, we wanted to show the party was growing, and we had three-time Colorado Governor Dick Lamb at the time all set to be our candidate. And in the 11th hour, the Perot people came in and cut his legs out, and Ross Perot ran again. That being said, I realized then it was a party of Perot and not a legitimate third party. But I wasn't going to fall victim to that again. That was too thin for me to go to a convention with no guarantees of anything, so I withdrew from it. And apparently some people within the Green Party, and Alaska certainly included, were not happy with the results because, they did a quick poll. Fox News did, and they put Biden, Ventura, and Trump, the three names, how would you vote? And I polled 18%, not even being a candidate.
Yeah, it's huge. You have a popularity. I mean, are you humbled by the group here, People for Jesse and Melissa, and this growing army? You must be proud of that.
Oh, very much so. I haven't discouraged them. I've told them that what they're trying to do is next to impossible. I guess it occurred somewhat with Dwight Eisenhower in the early 50s, where he was more or less drafted to be the next president. That's who the people wanted. And this year was the perfect opportunity for the third parties if they'd have grasped it, because nobody's excited truly except for their bases over these two candidates. You've got, I bet 60% of the nation would choose a third candidate if given the opportunity. 50 to 60% would.
It's true. We're talking to a former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura, who's very popular nationally. And he's a guy that, with his humility, obviously tough persona and real, but he also cares. And I've just in talking with you a few times and engaging, you really care about America. I look at what's happening, the polarization in America. It's real, it's visceral, it's palpable. I mean, there's a growing budget deficit. You've got anti-law enforcement sentiment, trade wars, and questions and connections with China, flags, anthems, patriotism, all this stuff, big money in elections, and the undercurrent there. Is there any remedy?
Yeah, there's a simple remedy. And it's as clear as the nose on your face. It happened in Minnesota. Right now, the best thing, and it's not going to happen, I don't think. It's borderline impossible. But we need a third-party president, because if Biden gets elected, the polarization continues. If Trump gets reelected, the polarization continues. The only way out of this is to elect a third-party person. That way it gives the Democrats and Republicans a common enemy. You have to give them, and they fear the third party more than they do each other. They will jump in bed together to stop any third party. I have the total blueprints in Minnesota. When I ran, I had a split. I had a Democratic Senate and a Republican House. For 3 years, whoever I tended to side with prevailed. If I sided with the House, they prevailed. If I sided with the Democratic Senate, they prevailed. Till the third year. The third year is when they jumped in bed together to oppose me, the common sense middle. I submitted my budget. They declined it. They submitted a budget. I vetoed it. They overrode my veto because they were in bed together, Dems and the Repubs. They overrode my second veto, so there was nothing more I could do. I then didn't seek re-election, and ultimately Minnesota, because they submitted a budget that was fiscally irresponsible, the two of them, and Minnesota ended up going into a $5 billion deficit because of it.
Your claim
That's
to
what these two parties will do.
Governor?
They will gamble the people for their own political power. They put their parties before the country.
Your claim to fame, and I had family members voting for you over Norm Coleman. My family leans Republican, and they said we'd rather have Ventura as governor because he's promised to cut taxes. And you really did, profoundly, maybe more than any governor in American history.
No, I didn't cut them that bad. What I did was give back rebate checks.
Fair enough.
What happened was the government was overcharging everybody, and they had a huge surplus. And then they'd spend the money. I go, this is ridiculous. They budgeted. If the taxation in the economy is so strong that they bring in more money than they need, they're not kids in a candy store. They don't have the right to spend it. It's not like an additional allowance. That money should be given back. Now, here's where the Republicans were a problem. When I went to give that money back, I gave it back in a sales tax rebate. That way you didn't have to declare it. The people get the money. It was theirs to spend, and they're going to spend it. It boosts the economy. The Republicans wanted to give it back in an income tax rebate. I said, what's the matter with you Republicans? The federal government will then take a third of our money because you'll have to declare it. You don't declare a sales tax. You'll have to declare the income tax, and the federal government will take a third of the money. So don't think the Republicans are that brilliant when it comes to taxing and keeping money from government, because they're not. And that was the biggest fight I had with them. I finally prevailed, and for 3 out of the 4 years, they got called Jesse checks.
Yeah, I remember them, and I had graduated from law school and left. And you were a mayor before you were governor, and of course in wrestling and in acting, you have such an illustrious career, and we can get into next segment. We're about to go to break here, but we're going to talk about how you can follow Governor Jesse Ventura, and I want to get his opinion on Biden and Trump, maybe get a forecast and talk about what he sees happening for future generations. And also, will Governor Ventura run in the future? He has such a growing base of people that adore him and that think that you just heard him. He's an intellectual leader, and he's thoughtful. So we're going to come right back here on the Tom Anderson Show with Governor Jesse Ventura.
This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
Well, I can cross him off my bucket list because he's at the top. Governor Jesse Ventura. We're going to get back in here on the Tom Anderson Show to Minnesota and national politics with some questions. And I promised when I talked to you, Governor, I wouldn't get into celebrity in Hollywood, but I do have to ask this. What was your favorite movie that you were in? Mine, of all the Schwarzenegger movies, and of course you as a star of it, is Predator. And I think you're most synonymous with that. Is that maybe your most endearing film as well?
Well, of course, because, Predator is, still on, cable networks and all that, and people watch it avidly. And I went to a sci-fi convention over in London and couldn't believe 10,000 people, these sci-fi people, they're crazy. They're so into their subject, it's really a remarkable thing. And Predator would be, but I would tell you this. I think I did my best acting, actually, when I played the man in black on the X-Files.
Yes, absolutely. Boy, that's true.
Because that was the hardest dialogue I had ever had to do. I mean, the writers for the X-Files, they give you a script and you read it and you don't even know what they're talking about.
It's so obscure.
And that becomes difficult as an actor because, those writers of the old X-Files, whoa, like I said, they challenged my acting ability probably the best. I mean, doing Predator was basically being in the jungle and spouting out one-liners.
Yeah.
But the action and all that. But the X-Files is much more mental, and the speeches you have to get on a script for the X-Files can get pretty dicey, to say the least.
Oh, I believe it. Well, you were the star in my eyes and my family's eyes in Predator for sure. We had a call off break, Minnesota politics. Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman, I'm not a fan of hers, to be candid. The Muslim population there, you represented the state and you were nearby close enough as a mayor. What do you think about that happening and this anti-American sentiment by some folks, particularly in the Twin Cities?
I don't think there's any anti-American sentiment. Because you disagree with government or disagree with policy, that is all America. That's what America's about. I don't have any problems whatsoever with people who dissent, as long as they do it properly and nonviolently. You have the right to do that in this country. You have the right to speak out. You have the right. That's what America, we're a melting pot. And if we cease to be a melting pot, like I've come out and said, as far as I'm concerned, they should take down the Statue of Liberty. Because we don't want people anymore. It's clear. We're building walls at our borders. We want to turn ourselves into East Berlin, I guess. I'm not too pleased with that. And the point being is that now we only want immigrants unless they have big money or jobs waiting for them here. It seems what's written on the Statue of Liberty is all BS now, so take and put it in a museum. Or maybe it's okay because it's facing Europe and not facing Mexico.
What do you think about someone asked on the conspiracy theory show, did they shut you down on that? I was a big fan of that.
Oh, yeah.
What happened?
Oh, yeah. I got read off on the floor of Congress for the thing where we exposed the FEMA camps that they now use to put these poor people in, the cages down on the border. We discovered them before they ever put them to use. And, you can't even get conspiracy theory. They wiped it off the internet. My buddy in Chicago, Mancow, the big disc jockey, he had them all. He came home on his thing, and it got wiped clean. He has none of them, and he can't get them anymore.
Good Lord. Up here, who's hosted my show a couple times? Nick Begich, Dr. Nick Begich. And whose dad...
I remember Nick well when we were up there doing harp.
You bet. And Nick hosts often for Alex Jones. Are there any... you've been on Joe Rogan, who I'm a huge fan of. That was a great 2-hour interview. I recommend people to go online and check that out. And Governor Ventura is charming and intellectual and thoughtful. I love the fact that you talk about Corona and the great Minnesota corn, and that you have you've talked with other hosts. Are there any favorites that you have? That I would assume Rogan is at the top for interviews.
Well, Rogan's a great interview. I always enjoyed being interviewed by Larry King when I was interviewed by him. And,
You bet.
And I love doing Howard Stern.
Yep, Howard's great. Howard is.
You know,
great.
I like doing. Although I will say I've renamed Howard.
What's that?
Oh, he's Hampton Howard now.
Yeah, well,
You know, he Howard's drank the Kool-Aid. He's got the big money, so he ain't the old Howard Stern. You know, people thought I was crazy when I said a couple years ago, I said I'll run for president, but I want Howard Stern as my running mate.
oh,
And people are, well, that's nuts.
Wouldn't that be a
no,
joy?
it wasn't. There's a method always to my madness. Get this. Howard Stern's on Sirius Radio. He's the most popular on there. You wouldn't have to come off the air because the FCC doesn't regulate them. You could stay on his show right up to Election Day. How much money could Howard Stern raise you running for president?
yeah,
Unlimited.
it's huge. It's like an Oprah Winfrey. People talk about her with the same
here's the
clout.
best part. If you're a third-party candidate, you need to pick a VP, and I'm saying this tongue-in-cheek a little. You need to pick a VP who's so despicable that they're not going to shoot you to put them in.
Oh,
and
that's
Howard would be perfect for that.
that's a memorable
Nobody's going to
quote.
kill me and put Howard in.
Oh boy, Governor Jesse Ventura. I
You know
tell
who
you,
told me to do that?
who?
Charles Barkley.
Oh man, Barkley and Shaq. I tell you, let's get, because we're almost out of time, and I'd love to get you back in the future, and your time's limited, I know. Last question, and that comes down to, and then we'll tell people how to follow you on the internet. The Trump and the Biden race, you're obviously on the ticket here in Alaska, so you may not want to weigh in on who you would choose if it wasn't you. Do you have feelings on that? One of them's going to win.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. Let me use my military experience for a moment. If Donald Trump was the commanding officer of my old unit, Underwater Demolition Team 12, right?
Yeah.
He would have been relieved of his command 6 months ago. And he would probably never command a unit again in the military.
And is that because of COVID-19 response, in your opinion?
Absolutely. He put people in danger. He lied about secret information. Can you imagine if a commanding officer in the military behaved the way he behaved with this virus, kept information from his troops, put them in the line of fire needlessly because of his own ego and his own personal fortune?
But, Governor, what about
Donald
Biden?
Trump was a commanding officer in the U.S. military. He would be relieved of his command, and he would probably never command again.
What about Senator Biden yesterday? Vice President Biden in Ohio asking for the vote for his U.S. Senate seat. He can't even remember Mitt Romney's name. Do you worry about his mental faculties, Biden's?
Not any more than Trump's, because they're both of the same age bracket, and the choices that Trump makes, if he's of sound mind, then I don't want his mind in there at all. Because, like I said, he's failed miserably on this virus. People are dying every day, and he's still out there holding mass rallies, spreading the virus, not giving a damn about the people around him.
Let's
I
talk
think
about.
I've spoken right there of how I feel. Like I said, this guy would have been relieved of his, he talks about being a military general and all this. He's a draft dodger. When it was his time to show patriotism, what did he do? He ran, used his daddy's money, and got out of it. My question is this: who took his place? And did that guy die in Vietnam?
That's Governor Jesse Ventura.
And let me
That's his
finish
question.
with this.
You bet.
Here's how I live today. I don't want a religious person telling me about government. I don't want a government person telling me about religion. And I don't want a draft dodger telling me what's patriotic.
RT.com, my friends. If you want to check Governor Jesse Ventura out, you can find out more at The World According to Jesse. And remember, everybody, to sign up at peopleforjesse.com if you want to be part of the growing supporting network to get Governor Ventura to run for president.
It would be fun to win Alaska.
It certainly would be. Governor Ventura, I tell you, keep up your spirit, and I appreciate the fact that you're so raw and so visceral and so honest. It's refreshing, my friend. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, and keep up the great show, Tom. It's people like you that go out there that grant free speech. That's one of the reasons I work for RT. I can't get on our media anymore. They won't let me on.
Well, listen, Governor Jesse Ventura, you are definitely an American, and I appreciate your service in the military as well. We're going to come right back. It's the Tom Anderson Show. Good morning.